All right. Let's look at our answers here. So on number 1, if I multiply it using the AC method, the 2 times the negative 12, the product's negative 24, and the sum is going to be 5, the middle term. So I chose 8, negative 3, because 8 times negative 3 gives a negative 4, and if I add them, I get 5. Okay, so again, I use those to expand the middle term of 5y. Now, remember the suggestion that if one of them is negative, put that one first. So I put the negative 3y first. That way you avoid chopping off the negative sign for the second set of parentheses, and then factor by grouping. Okay, so on number 2. Number 2, again, the product 4 times 1 is 4. They're going to add up to negative 5. This means that they both have to be negative. So negative 4, negative 1. So whenever I use this to expand the middle term, look what I did. I did minus 4x and then plus a negative x. That way, whenever I grouped up the first set and grouped up the second set, I didn't chop off a negative sign. Also, whenever I pulled out a 4x from... There we go. If I pulled out the 4x from the first one, what's left behind is x minus 1. But what I had in the second set is negative x plus 1, which means that I needed to factor out the negative. So whenever I factor out a negative, the 1 has to come with it. So really, I'm factoring out a minus 1. And then that switches the signs for me to x minus 1 so that the two parentheses match up. Okay. Number 3. Number 3, 6 times negative 12, we get a negative 72 for our product, and they have to add up to negative 1, negative 9, 8. Those are my two factors. Use those to expand the middle term, putting the negative 9 first because it's the negative 1. All right, and then factor by grouping. There we go. Number 4. Oh my goodness. Number 4, if you did it by the AC method, the product's supposed to be 45 times negative 32, which is negative 1,440. Whew. And they have to add up to 4? No way. No, not going to do it. So there is an alternative method. Here are the factors. And what I did to get them is guessing and checking. Now what I will say is that whenever I learned to factor when I was your age, there was no AC method, or at least our teacher didn't know about it. It was all guessing and checking, and some people struggled with it. Whenever I started teaching, and I had to teach factoring, and me trying to teach it by guessing and checking, for a lot of kids it just didn't work because there were too many possibilities for them to check, and they were just getting overwhelmed. So I did some research. I found this AC method, and it made kids a little bit more successful with factoring because it took some of the guesswork out. But sometimes guessing and checking is the fastest way to do it, especially if you're good at guessing, if you're good at multiplying and factoring numbers. So let's see how those factors come about, okay? So the last part of this, I know I said that this was the last set, but I lied. Surely you know that about me by now. Okay, so you do not have to expand the middle term if you're really good at some mental math. You can just simply guess and check. So whenever you do this on the quiz, I'm not going to be looking necessarily for the AC method. I'm going to be looking to see if you got the factors right and not just stole them from, you know, your neighbor's paper or something. So take a look at this one. I've got 6x squared plus x minus 15. Now, this is, whenever I factor is foiling backwards. So I'm just going to open up my set of parentheses. And I'm going to realize that if I were to FOIL this, the product of the first terms right there, that's going to multiply up to our first term, 6x squared. So you're looking for two factors of 6x squared. And it could be, just pick anything. Anything that's going to multiply up to 6x squared. So maybe I choose a 3x and a 2x. Those could be wrong. I don't know yet. But I'm just going to pick something, put it down. If it's wrong, I can go back and change it, because I could have to change it to x and 6x. Who knows? Okay. Now, the product of the last terms, whenever I multiply those last terms together, I'm going to get the constant term of negative 15. So I'm looking for two things that multiply up to negative 15. Forget about the negative sign. Just give me two factors of 15. Well, how about 3 and 5? Okay, so now what we have to do is we have to check the middle term. The middle term is going to come from the sum of the outside products and the inside products. It kind of looks like a rainbow, like this. Take a look. So whenever I multiply the 3x to the 5, I'm going to get 15x. Whenever I multiply the 3 times the 2x, I'm going to get 6. If I've got 15 and 6, there's nothing that I'm going to be able to do to get the middle term of just x. So those factors can't be in the right order. Now, stop for a second. Before we even move on to switching something, I should have known that this was not a good pairing to begin with. The reason why it's not a good pairing is because this 3 is in the same set of parentheses as that 3, which means that it could have been factored out of that first set of parentheses, which means that it was a common factor of the original trinomial to begin with. And just take a look. Does everything have a greatest common factor of 3? No. So therefore, these two 3's can't be together. So let's switch them. You don't switch both sets of factors, just switch the second set, and if this doesn't work, then we would go back and change the factors for the first set. Okay, so now let's check the rainbow again. The outside terms this time is 9x, and the inside term is 10x. 9 and 10. If I subtract those, I can get 1x, right? Exactly. So now let's think about the signs. Since it has to add up to a positive and it's multiplying to a negative, they have to be different, and the bigger one has to be positive. That means the 5 times the 2 has to be positive. Plus 5 minus 3, and we've just factored it without having to resort to the AC method. Again, I'm not expecting you to be able to do that. If this is tough for you, just rely on the expanding the middle term AC method, okay? So just give it a try, though. See what you come up with for this very last exercise. Try to factor this one by guessing and checking. All right. So let's see. Were you successful? Now remember, definitely in the pre-AP class, not only are we striving for accuracy, but we're also striving for speed. So the guess and check method might give you more speed, allowing you to do more of these problems quicker than, say, your friend right beside you. Okay, so now ordinarily if I'm doing this myself, I wouldn't write down the problem twice. I would have checked the factors to begin with. So I put the 4x times the 2x, because that would give me an 8x squared, and then the 7 times the 3 would give me 21. But whenever I check the inside and the outside terms, that doesn't add up to 34. Okay, so I wouldn't just write the problem down again. I would just take the 7 and the 3, I would erase them and switch their order. Okay, so then whenever I check the inside and the outside, I get a 6 and a 28. That adds up to 34 as long as they're both negative there, and they have to be to multiply up to a positive 21. So if that configuration didn't work, I would have to go back to the 4x and the 2x, and you don't switch them. What you have to do there is pick two different factors. You'd pick two different factors, like possibly a 1 and an 8, okay? And then see if the 3 and the 7 would work with those. All right, so there we go. There's our lesson on more factoring, and specifically factoring trinomials. Factoring trinomials, if it's a perfect square, it's just based on a pattern, and if the leading coefficient is 1, then we're just going to find two numbers that have a product of the C term, the constant term, and going to add up to the middle term. And then final method is the AC method, where you have to multiply the A times the C and get a product, and the two factors for that have to add up to the middle term. And if we're pretty good at mental math, maybe we could just guess it and check it if we understand the concept of what we're supposed to be doing with factoring. Okay, so you have yourself another factoring worksheet and another timed quiz. So I'll see you in class.